companies are really going to have to start to embrace the idea that they need to train and retrain over the career life cycle, that the idea that employees are just going to come in, which also then exacerbates the public policy gaps that I was talking about, right? So we don't have paid leave, we don't subsidize childcare, right? All of those things, most companies, with a few exceptions, are finding that they have to at least offer hybrid.
Welcome to the Wai Involve Podcast, Women in Tech series. Today, we are excited to welcome Tami Forman. Tami is a gender equality advocate and executive director at Women Back to Work. She leads returnship programs with top firms like Google, Amazon, and Tesla. Previously, she was the founder and CEO of Path Forward, helping thousands of caregivers restart their careers at companies like Apple, Netflix, and Walmart. Her background spans publishing, digital media, and B2B marketing. Tami's insights have appeared in Forbes, Fortune, WSJ, and Politico. She's a strong voice for inclusive workplaces where women and caregivers can thrive. Welcome to the Wai Involve Podcast, Tami. It's wonderful to have you on the show.
Thank you.
Let's start with our set of questions. So coming to my first question, Tami, what are some of the key social forces that continue to keep women out of the corporate workforce, especially in technology?
Yeah, so there are social forces here in the US that make it difficult for women to stay in the paid workforce across industries and across sectors. And that's mainly about a combination of social policy and culture, right? So social policy is, here in the US, we still don't have paid leave. We still don't have subsidized childcare. School schedules don't match work schedules, right? So there's all kinds of policy things. And then on the culture side, we have a culture that says that women are meant to be the primary caregiver, particularly for children, but for others as well, right? Parents, other people in our families that might need care. So women's cultural role as primary caregiver means that the gaps that are left by those public policy, right? The need to be with a baby when they're first born, the need to take care of that baby until it's old enough to go to school, the need to take care of that child when school gets out at 3 o'clock in the afternoon tends to fall on women. So those forces tend to push women out of the paid workforce. Obviously, many women manage to make those things work, but when you look at the participation rates of men versus women in the US in terms of the paid workforce, you see a real discrepancy. And that's because women are taking on a lot of those unpaid duties. And then there are a lot of barriers to getting back into the workforce when a woman's taken time out. And again, that's across industries and sectors where most managers of any kind are more excited to hire someone who's currently in the workforce or is only very recently left than someone who's been out for a few years or several years. I think that then coming back to tech, that's particularly enhanced in tech, where we have this need of this thought that everything changes all the time. And if you've been out of it for a few years, you must not be relevant anymore. So, but that bias shows up across a lot of different industries. So I don't think tech is always as unique as we think we are.
You somehow mentioned about barriers. So when you say barriers, is it somewhere across industries or is it just technology, which is?
It is across industries. I think there are certainly technical skills that may change over time. And so if someone's out of the workforce for particularly 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, they may need to reskill or upskill. But I think we discount how much people retain their skills and gain new skills through caregiving. And I think we actually overemphasize, things are always changing rapidly, but that's true for people who stay in career as well. So I think we overemphasize a skill gap that I think is not as acute as most managers and most leaders think it is. I think most people who come back into the workforce after any length of time get back up to speed pretty quickly and are able to learn those new skills pretty quickly. either through a combination of their own effort in terms of taking courses on their own and through the efforts of employers. I really do think employers, I have a very strong belief that particularly over the next, call it 10 to 20 years, as technology is changing rapidly, as the nature of the workforce is changing, as our demographics are shrinking, as the birth rate falls, that companies are really going to have to start to embrace the idea that they need to train and retrain over the career life cycle. That the idea that employees are just going to come in out of the box, ready to do a job, I don't think that was ever super realistic. And I think it's becoming less realistic as technology changes. So I think employers actually need to embrace the idea that anyone they hire is going to need some support, and that they should just build that into their systems. That's my
Absolutely. So,
sense.
right. So no matter the number of years, but if you have that kind of support where there is skill development, skill enhancement, I think definitely people can make it back to work. And absolutely hats off to those who are already doing it. And
Yes,
we'd appreciate if
absolutely.
more and more people can be a part of this initiative. But that's great. So which Tabby brings me to the next question. Uh, can you share the story behind this Woman Back to Work and what inspired its creation? I definitely would like to know, because I'm sure it's quite interesting.
Yeah, it is. So Women Back to Work is actually a program that is powered by Acraya. So Acraya is a tech staffing company. They're based in Santa Clara, but have operations. We have operations around the world, and staff for companies throughout the U.S. and around the world. So we do all kinds of technology staffing. So contingent work, direct hire, all kinds of staffing for big technology companies, right? We work with lots of big companies. And Women Back to Work was inspired by our co-founder, Sonu Ratra, who herself is a returner. So is someone who had taken some time off and had difficulty getting back into the workforce. But then when she co-founded Acraya and became part of a staffing firm, had many women, right, from her community, from her neighborhood, from her life. Hey, Sanu, you run a staffing firm. I'm trying to get back into the workforce. Can you help me? And a lot of it was her helping individual women with their resumes and getting ready for interviews and talking about skills, but then also, where she could, suggesting them for placements through Acraya. So, so having that opportunity, and from that came the idea of what if we could do this for companies as a service and create programming for them so that they could intentionally create pathways for returners and intentionally hire returners. That was about 10 years ago. We're on our 10th year anniversary. We've worked with amazing companies like Cisco, Pure Storage. We're currently running a returnship program for Infoblox. Palo Alto Networks was an early client. So lots of great companies that have been able to take advantage of this program in order to bring amazing talent into their workforce.
That's great. That's great. And this program that you're saying, is it based across, or is it country specific? So how is it?
So we run programs here in the U.S. We do have some companies that have run, and there are companies that run their own programs. There are definitely companies that have run programs in India. This is also a popular idea there as well. There's slightly different social forces at work in India as far as I have observed them over the last 10 years, but similar, right? Similar issues in terms of women taking on those care roles, but also being highly educated. India has a very high number of women engineers, which is an interesting phenomenon, and something to be very proud of, I should say. You make a lot more women engineers than a lot of other countries do, including the U.S. So companies have run this program globally. I would say the main places where I, over the last 10 years, have seen returnship programs is here in the U.S., in India, And then a few other places. There are some companies that run them in Europe, in other places, but they've mainly been a US and an India phenomenon for sure.
Despite ongoing conversations about gender equality, Tami, where do you see the biggest gaps persisting in US workplaces today?
Yeah, I mean, I think the big gaps are I think it's cultural, which also then exacerbates the public policy gaps that I was talking about, right? So we don't have paid leave, we don't subsidize childcare, right? All of those things. And there isn't always a concerted push for those kinds of public policy changes that would make it easier for women to stay in the workforce, re-enter the workforce, which is partly driven by culture. I think in this country, many people, I think there's two cultural forces at work here. One is a basic belief that women working is like a nice to have thing, but not a must have. That it's like, if women want to work, sure, that's great. But it's not seen as like, it's important for women to be in the paid workforce and contributing to the economy. There are forces that don't see that as a necessity. They see it as there's forces that also see it as not good, but we'll put that aside. But just sort of there's more people just like, well, yeah, if she wants to work, that's fine. If she doesn't, that's okay too. Which pulls away energy from the things that might change policy. And then I would say the other cultural thing is the continued belief that it is women's job to take on unpaid care. And I think that's changing somewhat, but it's changing very slowly, right? The idea that work of care for people should be shared more equitably, right? And I think the place you see that show up in workplaces, which is interesting, is here in the US, it is extremely common for men in a position of leadership, particularly high leadership at big companies, to have stay-at-home wives who take care of their house and their children. And that can create the cultural imperative on the corporate side that that's what it takes to get ahead, that's what it takes to succeed, which it is my personal belief that actually is a barrier to a lot of men as well, if you don't happen to have the luxury of a wife who is able or willing to be that unpaid labor. But certainly it is a barrier to women, because women are far less likely to have spouses who are willing to put aside their own career to do that work to support them. So the culture, it kind of feeds in both directions, right? It's a home culture and then it's a corporate culture, and those two things, right, intersect with each other. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. But then those who get back to work, so in the US, is there a flexibility, or do organizations support that kind of flexibility? Now that you have your family to take care of, you have your job to take care of. So how do they maintain this kind of balance? So absolutely, from the organization perspective, how do they help in striking that balance for employees?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say that it waxes and wanes with the economy. So in economies where talent is seen as scarce, employers feel more pressure to offer flexibility and be more accommodating. In economies where talent is seen as more plentiful, companies. So you're seeing that now in the US with return to office mandates, right? Where more and more companies. So COVID really changed the flexibility landscape here. A lot of jobs that were seen as impossible to do from home, suddenly became very possible to do from home. And that really changed the landscape. And I think that is one way or another a permanent change. Like, I think that most companies, with a few exceptions, are finding that they have to at least offer hybrid opportunities for employees. That the cat's out of the bag when they're like, no company can make the argument that like, well, it just can't be. It's more a question of like, what are you willing to do? But I think that more companies are pushing for people to be in the office and to be in the office more often. Now that they see that, they feel like they're more in a position of power, particularly in technology right now. I think technology leaders feel that it is employees who are on the back foot and that they are in a position of strength because there's lots of talent and, fewer opportunities than there maybe were a few years ago, although I think that's going to be changing. I think that's going to change quick. And I think employers need to be ready for that. But I think that smart employers are realizing that no matter what the economy is, the best people are going to find the opportunities that are good for them. And so, offering flexibility and working with your employees and accommodating those things is going to lead to better outcomes because you're going to find better people, and particularly that the lack of those policies tends to push out women. And I think companies have to realize that if you are not attracting 50% of the population, you're not getting the best, because math. That's math. That's how I look at it. That's math, right? If you have a company culture that is less appealing to half the population, I don't know how you stay competitive and innovative, but go
Right.
on, boys. That's what I say.
I would say that trust is something which you need to have or build with your employees. That plays a very big role.
I mean, a great line in a book by Laura Vanderkam, who's a time management expert who I follow and quite love. She had a great line in a book that came out right sort of after COVID, and she made the point that, like, great employees do great work wherever they are, and not great employees will disappoint you wherever they are, right? So the idea that there's something magical about the office is,
Right.
I mean, I do think there are things for people in early career. I think companies need to be thoughtful. I'm not like, gung-ho on like 100% work from home for everyone is the right answer. It's more about thinking in terms of like what's going to work for your company and the business objectives you're driving, and what's going to work. And part of that is figuring out what works for your employee population, right? Because if your policies don't attract and retain the best employees, you're not going to have the best outcome. So you have to be thoughtful about that. And it's not as simple as like everybody work from home all the time or everybody in the office all the time. There's more nuance, which I think is hard for some leaders to parse.
I'd like to know more on what practical steps can companies take to actively bring more women back into the workforce and support their growth once they return.
Yeah. So I think the first thing is for leaders to, it's the old saying, like the first thing you have to do is admit there's a problem. Like I think recognizing, again, across the economy, that there are fewer women participating in the paid labor force, particularly women 25 to 54, right? We see a big gap here in the US between men and women between the ages of 25 and 54. Those are prime working ages, right? They've gotten their college degree if they're college educated. Maybe they even have their advanced degree. They've gone that far in their education. And they haven't yet retired, even if they've gotten lucky and been done well, right? Those are the prime ages. Those are also the prime ages for having and raising children, right? Those are the times in one's life, male or female, when your children are likely to be born and be going through their life. So we are missing here in the US, roughly 12%, right? The comparison between the percentage of men of that age who are participating in the paid workforce and the number of women. It's about 89% to about 77%. I can update you on Friday when we get the jobs report out if that's changed, but it hasn't. I'm gonna bet. So the first thing is recognizing that is a problem, right? That there is that disparity, and so all of your recruitment efforts are not your right, and that your managers are less likely to hire people who've been out of the workforce, right? So they're less, and the longer they've been out of the workforce, the less likely they are to hire them. So you're missing people, right? There are people who are eager, and I want to underline, eager to get back to work and contribute to your company, and you're not hiring them because your managers are worried that they're going to get in trouble if they hire someone who's not up to the mark, right? So the first thing is recognizing that that's a problem, and it's a long-term talent management problem for you as a leader. And then the second problem is to figure out how to get intentional about that. So at Women Back to Work, we run returnship programs. They are a great way to intentionally hire people who've been out of the workforce. We provide a ton of support to the companies that we work with, both the managers and the recruiters and the folks on their team, and also the returners that they bring in. And we help them figure out how to provide that support. And I have seen across the 10 years that I've been doing this work, right? People have joined companies and through these programs, and they stay for a very long time. And I think that's a hidden benefit of programs like this and intentionally hiring returners and creating those pathways. I think that these are, I talked to a talent leader yesterday who said to me, these are different employees, particularly here in I'm saying here in Silicon Valley because I do a lot of work. I happen to be in New York, but I do a lot of work in Silicon Valley. So I think of myself as there even when I'm not there. In Silicon Valley, there's a lot of, even in this economy, right? What's the next hot thing? What's the next startup? Can I get into big tech? Like right? And the youngest folks are always looking for that next new opportunity. Can I make a little bit more money down the street? Can I get more stock if I go here, there, or everywhere? Women who are trying to come back into the workforce are looking for someone to give them a chance because they don't feel like anyone's giving them a chance. And they are looking for a place where they can restart their career, get the support they need to restart their career, and have the career they want with the life that they want. So when they go through a returnship program and they get into these companies, they stay. They stay for 5 years. They stay for 10 years. They stay. And they stay, meaning like they're not going and looking for the next thing, right? It takes a lot, actually, in my experience, to attract a returner away from the place she returns to. It happens. Obviously, we're all managing our careers, but it takes more than, hey, we've got an IPO coming, or hey, we can give you a few more stock options. It takes more than that. So when these companies set these programs up, they're bringing in people who want to contribute, who want to be part of that team, and who want to stay. And so I would say recognizing that there's a problem and then thinking about how you can intentionally, it's not going to happen by magic. You can't have a meeting with all your managers and say, hey, we just noticed there's a bunch of women who have computer science degrees and have had 10 years experience in the tech industry, and we're not hiring them. You should go find some. In one ear, out the other, right? In one ear, out the other. I think we have to understand, I think managers have to understand, leaders have to understand that managers are under a lot of pressure and hiring is hard for them. It's in addition to their regular job, right? They want to get it over with as fast as they can so they can get on to their regular job, the thing that you're actually paying them for. And they are desperately afraid of making a mistake. If you are going to get in trouble at work, particularly here in the US, I'm sure it's true other places, if you're going to get in trouble at work, it's going to be a people issue. People issues are the things that are going to get you in trouble faster than anything. You can make a lot of mistakes in corporate America, and people mistakes are really the ones that get you in trouble, and they're emotional, right? Anything to do with people is emotional, and it's conflict, and it's uncomfortable, all that. So managers are very fearful of making a mistake when it comes to hiring. And so, and I've met many managers who are almost more willing to leave a seat open than hire someone they think might not be up to the mark because they are so fearful. And so part of being intentional as a leader in terms of creating programs for returners is creating a permission structure. So part of what returnships do is they create a permission structure. We are telling you that we want you to hire folks from this talent pool. We are telling you that we want to do this. It's important to us because we think it's going to be great. But you're not going to get in trouble. You're not going to get in trouble if something goes wrong because we're sanctioning this and we're giving you the permission to do this and take this risk. And because we actually know it's not that much of a risk, but we're willing to give you that comfort that you're not going to get in trouble if this doesn't work out for you. And it's funny, I've been doing this work for 10 years now, and the thing that's so interesting to me is watching the managers go from being quite skeptical to like the biggest champions. Because they bring people in. I mentioned we're working with Infoblox right now. We've been checking in with their managers. We've gotten feedback like, I would never know this was someone who'd been out of the workforce. This person is better than some of the quote unquote regular hires I've had. And they're pleasantly surprised at how high caliber the people they're bringing in are. I have seen across my career doing this work, companies retaining, 75, 85, 95% of the returners they bring in on contract, converting them into full-time regular positions. And it's because, and this is, I think, a key thing, companies don't do programs like this because it's nice or good. Particularly when it comes to hiring, companies do not hire people out of the goodness of their heart or charity, right? Like, companies hire people they think can do the work that needs to be done. And I think where you see in returnships, particularly the proof in the pudding, is on those conversion rates, because you might be willing to give someone a few months contract to give them a chance, but you are not bringing them onto your regular payroll with all the things that come with regular payroll here in the US if you don't think they're amazing, if you don't think they're up to snuff. And so the proof is really in that, that companies are finding people who are going to be great employees for them.
Do we have any kind of recent data or trends on women returning to work in the US, and what these trends reveal about progress, or are there still challenges which are persistent?
We're still facing persistent challenges. I think the challenge right now, which has been the challenge for, I would say, the last year and a half or so, is here in the US, the economy, particularly the tech economy, there have been a lot of layoffs, which has made, so even to the extent that there are companies hiring, they feel that talent is readily available without having to do special programs. So I think that's been a challenge. And like any kind of hiring program, I mean, a lot of companies, last summer and the summer before, cut back on their internship programs or canceled them for the summer. So I don't think there's something unique to returnships per se, although I think the thing that's different about returnships is they are not yet fully embedded into companies the way college internships are. They're not a part of like the cycle persistently. There's a few companies that run returnships, really persistently, but they're more the exception than the rule. And I think that's an opportunity for us to think about how we can make them more durable within companies, so they are running them on a regular cadence as opposed to, doing them once or a few times. So I think that sometimes with big companies, it's like trying to turn a cruise ship, right? It takes a while, and it takes a while for things to really stick within a company. So I think there's an opportunity for those of us who work in this field over the next couple of years to kind of get underneath and figure out what would it take for a company to like build this into their process so that it's not a once in a while thing, that it's a part of their hiring, just like any other hiring initiatives that they might have that are things they do, year in and year out. So I think that's a real opportunity. I think that's been the challenge. And then, like I said, that, the social and cultural forces, I think, are also, counterweights. They make it hard for women to stay in the workforce, which puts more people out. They make it hard for women to come back. And the persistent sort of cultural narrative that like, well, that's just kind of the way it is. I think there is a little bit of like, well, that's just kind of how it is. And I think that can be a counterweight, particularly in times when employers are not feeling quite so pressed to find talent. It kind of becomes a little harder. So we got to push. I feel the pressure every day to like push employers to see that there's an opportunity here that they're missing in any economy.
Absolutely. But I do definitely see light at the end of the tunnel because Wai Technologies, who is our official sponsor, it had conducted this Woman Back to Work drive a couple of years back, and I would like to put it here that the discovery was just amazing. The kind of talent that we tapped into, we were just surprised. So you never know what you might discover when you get into such kind of exercise, and then yes, employers should adapt to this because it's about the intent of people who want to actually get back, and then rest is all support, and they'll do wonders, is what we feel.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I've seen it. I've seen thousands of women go back to work through these programs, and some men. I mean, this is something that there are men that leave the workforce for care and other reasons, and I think it's more common for women. And so, as I was saying, when you look at those aggregate macro numbers, that's what I look at. I think in terms of system and change of the system. But on the individual level, down on the ground, there are people of all backgrounds who have had to step away and struggle to get back. And they're amazing. They're absolutely amazing.
Yes, Tammy, that brings us to end of all the questions. And
Awesome.
absolutely, it was absolutely wonderful to have you on this podcast. Quite insightful. We'll introspect more on this particular topic, and we'll, of course, if opportunity strikes back, we'll love to connect back again over our next episode for returnship.
Yeah, that would be wonderful. I'd be happy to come back anytime.
That was really insightful, Tammy. Thank you for sharing your valuable thoughts, your journey, and the incredible work you're doing to make workplaces more inclusive and supportive for women. Your passion and leadership are truly inspiring. To our listeners, we hope today's conversation sparked new ideas and deeper reflection on how we can collectively build a more equitable future of work. You can listen to more episodes of the Wai Involve Podcast Women in Tech series on Apple Podcast and Spotify, or watch the full episode on our YouTube channel. For more on how Wai Technologies is supporting innovation, inclusion, and impact in the tech world, visit wine.com. If you would like to be a guest on our show or nominate a speaker, write to us at podcast@wine.com. We would love to hear from you. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next episode. Thank you.